I can't answer if I'm more Israeli or more Lebanese, because I was born in Lebanon. Lebanon will always be my homeland no matter what. This is a fact. I'm Israeli because I hold an Israeli ID, because I believe in me being an Israeli and I support Israel's right to exist. And I'm living here as an equal citizen that has all of its rights and all the protection that the government can provide me. So like, I can't choose between the two. I'm both of them. I turned myself to be bridge between communities, between the Israelis and the Lebanese. And hopefully I'm wishing for, these two identities to live in peace with each other by having peace with Lebanon and Israel, and not just a piece of paper that is called ceasefire.
In this episode, presented by the Jerusalem Center for Security and Foreign Affairs, we turn our focus to Israel's Lebanese Christian community, a group whose story is often untold. Yes, believe it or not, there is a small community of Lebanese Christians of roughly 3,000 people that have been living in Israel for over 25 years. During the Lebanese Civil War, the South Lebanese Army, composed mainly of Lebanese Christians, allied with Israel in their shared fight against Hezbollah, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, and other militant groups. As the war intensified and Israeli forces withdrew from Lebanon in 2000, many members of the South Lebanese Army and their families were forced to flee Lebanon overnight and seek refuge in Israel. I'm joined by the none other Jônathan Elkhoury. He's an Israeli Lebanese Christian citizen himself. Thank you very much for joining me today, Jônathan.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me, Sarah.
It's very exciting having you here in studio. I have to ask you. I mean, it's got to be such a identity crisis being who you are. How do you? What's it like having two identities that are essentially, in real-time war against each other?
I wish it was only two identities. I have so many others, it's like the Lebanese and Israeli, but I'm also Christian, I'm also gay. So it's like every one of them is combating and fighting each other to have its own kind of space. But it was difficult throughout the war, because on one hand, I still have family in Lebanon that could be hurt because of the war. Wars are messy. I'm sure that, we've seen that the IDF was really precise in only targeting Hezbollah targets. But at the end of the day, it's something that worries me. And hopefully, I'm wishing for, these two identities to live in peace with each other by having peace with Lebanon and Israel, and not just a piece of paper that is called ceasefire. This is not what we need. So it was really difficult at the beginning, knowing that, I trust the IDF. I grew up in Lebanon having the IDF as my childhood scenery all around us in south of Lebanon, but we always knew that the IDF is there because they're also protecting us. But this time is different, because the IDF wasn't in south of Lebanon because they have bases there. No, they entered to fight against Hezbollah terrorists. But it was really helpful to know that a lot of the people were evacuated from their homes, so civilians weren't really hurt.
Yeah.
So that was kind of reassuring that. But it made me also want to share much more voices from Lebanon that are speaking against Hezbollah, that are speaking in favor of having some sort of relations with Israel. So that's kind of puts me in a really special position where I turned myself to be bridge between communities, between the Israelis and the Lebanese. I know the Lebanese society. I'm Lebanese. I lived in Lebanon. I fled to Israel. I'm Israeli. I live in Israel. I know the Israeli population. I know also what they think about Lebanon and what they want to see with Lebanon. So this is where I've kind of felt that I can bring that conversation for both sides to kind of see what's going on in the two territories.
Yeah, you really are the embodiment of that middle ground, that border between Israel and Lebanon. And I can't imagine the mental distress it must have been for you. Mm-hmm. I mean, as you said, you have family still in Lebanon. You have family in the north of Israel. You yourself, you drove from Haifa today. You were personally affected by this war.
Oh, yeah.
And at the same time, you know that your family is also in Lebanon and they're also being affected. And I can imagine it's got to be such a dilemma for you, because you understand the reasoning behind this war. But it's like you said, that of course you can't help but worry and understand, be empathetic to the other side.
Yeah, I think it's less than a dilemma, because I'm 100% support of the IDF and Israel's fight against Hezbollah. But it's more of how to bring it, or how to kind of bridge it to the Lebanese population to understand that Israel's fight is not against any Lebanese citizen. It's not against the government of Lebanon. It's not against the existence of Lebanon. Israel's interest in Lebanon is not to occupy territories like Hezbollah is always trying to tell them, and it's not to harm the Lebanese civilians. So I think that was where I've kind of tried to see what I can bring from Israeli voices to reassure to the Lebanese population and public that Israel's fight is not against them. And I think that a lot of Israel's actions in that war were really effective because Hezbollah is now in its weakest since it was ever established in 1982 officially by the order of the Islamic Republic of Iran. And the supply chains from Syria the supply chain from Iran through Syria is now officially cut down after the Assad regime has fell. So now you can say that in the first time ever for about 50 years, Lebanon could finally be independent. And this is Lebanon's money time. This is you can say the clock is ticking.
It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity,
exactly.
100%.
And I'm really hoping to find an actual leader in Lebanon that will take that chance and finally bring Lebanon to where it should be, a peaceful, that is not involved in wars in the territory, because it's not in any Lebanon's war to have war with Israel.
So, Jonathan, you mentioned obviously that you have family in Lebanon as well, and I wanted to ask from you, what are you hearing from them, and in general, the Lebanese Christian community in regards to this war between Israel and Hezbollah?
Yeah, well, first of all, we're not in contact with our family since we arrived to Israel. There was a huge disconnection with the rest of our family because, we're in Israel. Israel and Lebanon are considered enemy states, and there's laws in Lebanon preventing Lebanese civilians to speak with Israelis. They could face jail. And also, you can say some sort of a way they kind of disown us. You're in Israel, we're in Lebanon, that's it.
Wow.
But I do speak with a lot of other Lebanese people, not just Christians, by the way, also Muslims, both Shia and Sunni, and also Druze people, that they're really hoping to finally kind of disconnect from the chain of Hezbollah, of controlling Lebanon or the Lebanese politics or the Lebanese territory. You can say that Christian life in Lebanon had its ups and downs. Lebanon used to be a majority of Christians. We were 51% of the population. This is like the official numbers on the day that Lebanon had its independence from the French mandate. And ever since, there was a lack of, you can say, protection for Lebanese civilians. And it had its peak during the civil war when the PLO controlled the south of Lebanon and started persecuting Christians and also Shia Muslims and Druze people in south of Lebanon that didn't want Yasser Arafat to occupy their territory. So Yasser Arafat, with his terror group, started persecuting them. And that's, at the end of the day, what led to the creation of south of Lebanon, what led to me being an Israeli citizen today, because I had to flee because of Hezbollah later on.
So actually, I wanted to ask you, since we're already on the topic now, can you explain in your own words basically what this South Lebanese Army was and how your family fit into that context, their involvement?
Yeah, well, you can say that the South Lebanon Army was created by Lebanese nationalists that wanted Lebanon's independence, didn't want any foreign interference, not Syria back then that was really controlling Lebanon and even territories of Lebanon and occupying a lot of the north and the east where it's with Syria's border. You had the PLO that took over, it's called Fatah land, south of Lebanon from the 70s till 82 when they were pushed out with the help of the IDF from Lebanon, and then against Hezbollah, that was the Islamic Republic of Iran's interfering in Lebanese territory and Lebanese population. So the South Lebanon Army's, you can say, greater goal was to free territories of Lebanon from any foreign holdings. And that's what they worked for alongside with the IDF. They really kind of wanted to achieve some sort of a bigger picture, not just to kick the terror organizations out, but also to hopefully have some sort of a peace agreement between Israel and Lebanon.
And unfortunately, it's the very opposite that happened.
But unfortunately, yeah, it was because of like a lot of things that happened because of Israelis' decisions, and then Hezbollah getting involved in Lebanese politics during the 90s much more effectively and really assassinating anyone that didn't really approve their actions. That's how we found ourselves with prime ministers being assassinated, presidents being assassinated, political leaders, and also journalists being assassinated by Syria and Hezbollah and others because they don't want them to speak out their mind. When the IDF decided, or when you can say when Israel decided to withdraw from south of Lebanon on the 23rd of May 2000, Israel didn't share that information with the South Lebanon Army. They were allies. They were working together for 18 years. They were really there for everything for each other. And then in one decision by the Prime Minister of Israel back then, Ehud Barak, he made the decision that the IDF needs to withdraw from south of Lebanon as fast as possible in 24 hours in order to make sure that not any IDF soldier would be harmed because of that, because they start shooting at the positions that they started to flee from. Right. And that created a huge chaos in south of Lebanon because the South Lebanon Army wasn't notified. And then everyone saw that Hezbollah are starting to take over and occupy the territory that the IDF has already taken. But also there was another thing that was taken as a factor. Hassan Nasrallah, the head of the terror organization Hezbollah back then, may his fall not be a blessing. A few days before the withdrawal, he made a speech and he said that everyone that was part of the South Lebanon Army community and everyone who supported the South Lebanon Army or even collaborated or worked with Israel has three options. One option is to flee with the enemy to their state, that means to Israel. The second option was to surrender to the Lebanese authorities. Many of them that did that suffered a lot under Hezbollah in these prisons. Many of them didn't survive. Some of them are still there till today. And the third option was to be butchered while hugging their own mother. That's what Hassan Nasrallah said. He said, we're coming with our rifles and not with our hands for talks and peace. And that created the bigger chaos that happened on the day of the withdrawal, where 8,000 Lebanese men, women, and children stood by the Israeli border and waited to get asylum in Israel. And Israel took a few hours to decide to open the border and let anyone that wanted to go in an opportunity to flee and get shelter here. Wow. And 8,000 people came that day. My dad was one of them. I remember that day. There was a huge chaos in our village. We live a few kilometers away from the Israeli border. So one of the turning points towards Israel is from our village. So there were huge packs of cars waiting in line. A lot of people came to ask my dad what to do, to flee with their family or to stay in Lebanon or to surrender. No one knew what's going to happen the day after. And then my dad decided in the last second to flee. And he came to Israel, and my mom said, I'm not leaving. This is our home. This is our family. We need to stay in Lebanon. And as a first step, it was like, okay, like my dad should leave because he was an officer for 18 years in the South Lebanon Army, and he's in the direct danger of Hezbollah. So he will leave, and then we will see what's going to happen. Everyone thought at the beginning that there going to be some sort of an agreement between Israel and Lebanon and then return everyone that left and fled to Lebanon's safety or safely. But as you can imagine, because I'm sitting here today as an Israeli citizen,
history went a lot more different than planned.
The Middle East is not predictable, so that didn't happen. And my mom decided that we should do the trip to Israel because Hezbollah was already controlling all of south of Lebanon. They did a huge parade the day after. They told us that they're now the new chief in town. We started locking our doors. Every aspect of our life changed in seconds. Wow. Because of that. They started entering homes of the South Lebanon Army people, beating children, women, whoever came in their way, doing patrols at night, making sure that everything goes the way that they want it to go. And my mom said, it's not safe for my dad to get back to Lebanon. But also, she didn't want us to grow up without a father. So she decided to leave her family. Wow. And through Cyprus, we fled to Cyprus. And then from Cyprus, we came to Israel when I was already 9 years old. It's about a year and 3 months after the withdrawal.
Wow. Well, first of all, your mother is a very brave woman. And
she is.
Honestly, I mean, I can't even imagine, what it must have been like for you arriving in a foreign country, not just any country, essentially an enemy country that I'm sure your whole life you've been told by, within sitting in Lebanese society that, those are bad people and they're not going to help you. Tell me, what was it like arriving here in Israel for the first time and growing up? Did you feel like, you were fitting in? Did you feel like you were sort of cast aside?
Oh, that's a fantastic question, because we did have a lot of support from the Israeli society. Everyone knew back then who is the South Lebanon Army, these allies that we worked with and collaborated with, and now they're kind of away from their home and we need to support them. So we had, you can say, the full support of the Israeli society that helped us out. People would come and kind of volunteer, take us trips to see Israel, this new home that we are now living in, to kind of discover this new kind of country that we live in. One of the funny things is that I didn't have the same process like any other South Lebanon Army kid, for example, because at the beginning, the government opened special schools for the South Lebanon Army that were run by the South Lebanon Army communities. The majority of the teachers were from the South Lebanon Army community. And also the first year, they studied, a lot of them, the Lebanese curriculum.
I'm assuming the assumption was because they would go back eventually.
They might go back.
Right.
Exactly. So a lot of them studied in the Lebanese. And then the second year, they decided to shift it because Israel also realized if they want to stay, they should stay. And it's possible for them to stay here in Israel. And I came for the next year where already there was groups of people, although suddenly I met a lot of my fellow classmates in Lebanon that also fled and disappeared. I'm like, where did they go? So I found a lot of them here in Israel. I was in one of their weddings. One of my former classmates from Lebanon's wedding a few years ago. And there was some sort of a closure, you can say. Like suddenly one day they disappeared and then you discover that they're somewhere else. But also I immediately didn't really go through the Lebanese school because my dad decided, we were at the beginning in Nahariya, in this beautiful resort by the beach, like a cabin house and stuff like that they located the South Lebanon Army communities in all over northern of Israel. Some of them were in kibbutzim, some of them in hotels, and my dad was in this like resort in a cabin, cabin wood, like small, like a house. A month after we arrived, he decided that we need to move to Haifa. Because Haifa is a mixed city. There's also a Christian population in Haifa that we can be part of. There's also much more options for work and jobs because, both my mom and dad needs to find a work to work in. And they had also issues with Hebrew. So my mom took her a long time to study Hebrew. So she found a work in an Arabic speaking place, really comfortable and not difficult. But we found ourselves in some sort of a unique position. We found ourselves in between two communities. The one is the Jewish community that we're not part of because we're not Jewish. The second part is the Arabic community in Israel that treated us a lot at the beginning like traitors.
The Arab-Israeli community,
Yes.
who is not Lebanese. They
Who's
treated
not
you
Lebanese.
like traitors?
Yeah, the Israeli Arab community, Christian community, the Muslim community, except the Jewish community, because you can say that we went through a lot of similar things
Right.
with the connection and being loyal is not a good term. It's being allies, and even much more than allies. A lot of people say brit damim in Hebrew, like a blood
Alliance.
yeah, like blood alliance. And I refuse to say blood alliance because we did some sort of a brother alliance. Brit achim. We're working together because we want to have a better future for both of us. So I think it's much more stronger than just blood alliance that is all involving wars and falling next to each other. No, we need to thrive with each other. So we went through the same, you can say, thing with like the Druze community in Israel that is really involved. But we weren't accepted to Arabic schools in Haifa.
Wow.
They refused to accept us. There were even Arabic members of parliament, Israeli Arabic members of parliament, who said that the South Lebanon Army kids needs to pay the price of what their parents did by joining and working and aligning themselves with Israel. So we did suffer
And these are
a lot.
Arab-Israeli members of parliament that are saying this.
Yeah, members of Israeli Knesset that get paid by the Israeli government, that work with the Israeli government. They said those things.
Wow.
And it put us in a really difficult position, you can say, because the only schools that accepted us in really open arms were the Hebrew school. So at the age of 9, in fourth grade, I found myself in a Hebrew public school, a Jewish public school, I'm being the only Arab speaker in the whole school.
That's got to be a lot of pressure for a new kid. I mean, it's not just like you're transferring from a new school or a different
And I
city.
didn't know a word of Hebrew. I knew how to say shalom because that's
a good start.
word. That's the first word that everyone learns. But I didn't know anything. I didn't understand anything. I was sitting in class. I'm like, okay, what's happening? What's going on? It was completely pushing me into like the deep water and like swim.
Wow.
And the school took me as a project. That was something that I really felt that I didn't feel separate. I felt that I was taken care of. I felt that I was part because every time in the playground, they will come and play with me, although we didn't really understand each other. But we will play catch, we will play a lot of things together. And sometimes when the school needed to like report something for me, I would go sit in the principal's office for like half an hour and they will bring the janitor from the school next door that had an Arabic worker to come and translate for me in Arabic what they want to kind of information they want to give me. But I also didn't understand him because I know Lebanese Arabic that involves a lot of French.
Right, which is very different from Palestinian Arabic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I had difficulties also understanding him. But you can say that being a child really helped me to cope faster.
Yeah.
Because I did feel kind of the warmth of the school, that I had a teacher that would take me almost every day to teach me Hebrew. I'm still in contact with her till today.
Yeah.
And the teachers that welcomed me in my first ever classroom in that school, also, I'm still in contact with her. So like, I really felt...
You had a community
Exactly.
that was welcoming you. So, I mean, you obviously became a success story yourself. You know, today you're a public speaker, you're a columnist, you're a media and a public diplomacy advisor. But I'm curious, do others from your community manage to integrate into Israeli society as well?
I separate that between the youth, my age, and our parents' age. Our parents' age, at the end of the day, the majority of them came here in the average age of like 45. All of them have been military personnel. None of them, the majority of them didn't finish middle school or high school. So they didn't have any diplomas or any jobs that they can actually go and work and have a decent income. Yeah. So all of them had to go and work in much more physical jobs, like in factories and stuff like that. So a lot of them had a lot of difficulties to integrate. Their Hebrew is not well. A lot of them are also alone. Not all of them came here with their wives and kids, like at the end of the day, my dad. Some of them are completely alone. And the community tries to take care of it. The government tries, but not enough, as we say it. But our generation, although we had those difficulties and not really being dealt with in the way that we wanted it to be dealt with, but my generation is really integrated to the Israeli society. We have 95% of enlistment to the military or national service. A lot of us are in high tech. A lot of us are in public service. A lot of us from like government work to police departments, to being the spokesman of the Arabic department of the police, or even the IDF. So we're really integrated to all aspects of lives. And I'm really we're doing also another step to share the knowledge about the South Lebanon Army much more wider in the Israeli population, because the younger generation are not really aware of that. And we kind of made it our mission, many of us, to kind of go out and speak about it and do lectures about it and kind of go on TV and speak about it in interviews and speak about, our issues. Now we're celebrating Christmas. I will never forget our first Christmas here in Israel, being in this small, you can say, apartment in Haifa, only the four of us. My parents, my brother, and I, and that's it.
Yeah. You're cut off. That's it. You're left alone in the world.
Yeah.
You don't have any more family.
Exactly.
Your other family in Lebanon has essentially disowned you.
Yeah.
You're starting all over again.
And in Lebanon, we used to have a huge family that we would sit down, celebrate with each other. We will wait for Santa Claus to come in the evening and bring presents to the kids. And now it's just the four of us. So the first pictures that we have from Christmas here in Israel is only 3 people in the picture because we needed a 4th person to take a picture, and there was like no one there to take the picture for us. And selfie wasn't a thing back then because it was still the film cameras where like you can't even see what picture you got. So these are like the first memories of Christmas here. And then the following year, we met with other families from the South Lebanon Army community that we started doing holidays together. So you can say we created some sort of an alternative family for us to start and feel that sense of community, or even that sense of family during the holidays in particular.
Right. I noticed that you're wearing a beautiful golden cross and also a cedar tree, which is obviously a symbol of Lebanon. My question for you is, were there moments in your life where you sort of felt torn between, your Lebanese heritage and this, new Israeli surrounding, which I think at some point must have also kind of become an identity for you?
I think at the beginning I had a lot of difficulties because, for example, my classmates would ask me, like, what are you? How do you define yourself? Are you Lebanese or Israeli? Like, I always had the feeling that I need to choose between the two, that I can't be both of them. And I had a lot of struggles with that. Add to that later on, the sexual kind of thing.
That's a whole other
layer of things that I didn't want to deal with that till like when I was 21 years old, because like it was too much to handle. But then I got to a point when I started speaking out more publicly about that, and when I started to kind of also vocalize that it's not easy, and to vocalize that it's much more complicated. There's no easy answers. I can't answer if I'm more Israeli or more Lebanese, because I was born in Lebanon. Lebanon will always be my homeland no matter what. This is a fact. I'm Israeli because I hold an Israeli ID, because I believe in me being an Israeli and I support Israel's right to exist. And I'm living here as an equal citizen that has all of its rights and all the protection that the government can provide me. So like, I can't choose between the two. I'm both of them.
Yeah.
So that's what I speak about a lot, about this kind of having this like dual identities that exist in you all the time at the same time. And I can't, I will not let anyone kind of force me also to choose one of them. But I think I was kind of privileged in that because I was able to actually explore myself. I know a lot of also like Lebanese that don't really speak Arabic anymore because of that. Because the feeling that sometimes we had to choose. It's like really interesting when I speak today with people my age. Maybe we're like getting into like too much deep to that.
No,
but when I speak with like fellow South Lebanon Army youth like myself, we talk now much more comfortably about our identity crisis that we had throughout the years.
Yeah.
Because I think at the beginning we had that sense of shame, not because anyone forced us. It was kind of a self kind of down.
I mean, there really was a stigma. And like you said, you were viewed as traitors back home in Lebanon and also by, the Arabic-Israeli community here. So it was, of course you would have internalized those feelings. And I'm sure it takes a long time to be able to cope and make sense of it all, especially when you're a young child.
Yeah. And also the Arabic community disowned us. I'm like, okay, we don't want anything to do with you. Like, no, we're Lebanese, we're Christians, and we don't want anything to do with you. So like, we're not gonna involve ourselves with what's going on with the Arabic community. We don't want to involve ourselves with anything that has to do with that, because we felt that sense of pushing us away. So like, you don't want us, we don't want you back. So a lot of us, me also, I didn't speak Arabic. Like my Arabic stuck at the age of 9. That's when I left Lebanon for many years, because I didn't really practice it. I didn't really speak it publicly, except with my parents.
Right.
So like all of my friends are Jewish friends because I studied in a Hebrew school. Although in middle school and high school, we had a bigger community of the South Lebanon Army in the high school because they put everyone in the same high school. So we had that community there, but also we had Arabic students in that school. So it wasn't just the South Lebanon Army. We had Druze, we had also Muslim students. So it wasn't properly a mixed school, but it was a school that is a public school that opened for everyone that wanted to be in that school.
Yeah.
So then kind of it changed a little bit. Suddenly, like we were more involved in the Arabic community. Also in Haifa, we lived in an Arabic neighborhood. But but we had our difficulties there. But it's also like kind of fun to look at it today. Fun. Then it wasn't fun, but today is like much more like we laugh at it.
Yeah.
It's like that's what we thought. That's like what we also kind of acted upon. But today we're way more involved. In 2012, I became the spokesman. It was later on, but I started to be involved in the Israeli Christian Recruitment Forum. That was an organization that was built by a priest in Nazareth that called the Christian community in Israel to join the military or national service as that sense of being part of Israel, of being an essential part of community, contributing to the society that also benefits us and gives us our rights. So it was kind of, to give back to the country that protects us. And that's kind of something that I got myself involved in. But up to that point, I didn't want to do anything with any community here in Israel that is not the Jewish community. And it changed. So like also communities changed. Now we're perceived differently by the Arabic community in Israel than we used to back then.
So what's that relationship like today?
We do have some mixed marriages between the community and the rest of the Arabic community here, because usually I say we, but it's the community. Usually people get married within the community of the South Lebanon Army community. Right. One, because of how we were perceived here, but also because we wanted to kind of continue that.
Preserve that legacy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That we're Lebanese, continue the Arabic. We kept our Arabic Lebanese dialect, our traditions, our history, our support of Israel and how we perceive Israel, how we go to the military and national service, how we go and speak about Israel abroad to kind of bring people to see Israel in different lights. But now there are much more because there's less and less opportunities within
Everybody's
the community.
married themselves.
Exactly. We are a small community, 3,500 people. It's only 680 families. We are the Ashkenazis of the Middle East. So we don't get a lot of children. So like 1, 2, maybe 3 children in a family, and that's it. Yeah. For example, like we are 3 out of the closet gay people in the South Lebanon Army community. So like one of us is going to stay alone. So like, what do we do in that position? But yeah, so now I think also because we did a lot of hasbara, you can say, about the South Lebanon Army, who we were, who we fought against. A lot of people thought that we fought against the Lebanese government. It was never the case.
Right.
The Lebanese government supported the South Lebanon Army in its activity in the first few years. So that was kind of something that was really important for us also to share and kind of get the record straight historically about who were the South Lebanon Army, who they fought against, and what was their role in everything that happened. So it changed a lot of people's minds.
And today you're still very much helping your community. I mean, in an international scale, you're an official spokesperson at the Israeli Citizens Spokesperson's Office, advocating for Israel. What was it like during the war, between Israel and Hezbollah, advocating for Israel to the international community from your own very unique perspective? Yeah, well,
before I joined the Israeli Citizen Spokesperson's Office, I felt the need to share kind of voices from both sides, both from Israel and both from Lebanon. I think I bring it also to my way of speaking and my messaging towards that. For me, I don't want to see these two countries fighting each other, because two of them are part of me. Two of these countries are really important to me, and I do want to see them living and prospering next to each other and with each other. So when I try to bring that to the table, is to try and bring the whole image, not just one-sided image. Also, that's what I'm doing, or that's what we are doing with the Israeli Citizen Spokesperson's Office. We gather a lot of information from what's happening every day with the 8 fronts that we're fighting in around, the war with the Islamic Republic of Iran being the head of the snake, the head of the octopus that really meddles around and supporting and funding all of our, you can say, terrorist organizations that are fighting us today. But also to kind of bring much more updated and much more wider spectrum of information from different type of people that everyone has different expertise. So for example, when we do the live briefing, I get a lot of specific questions that I'm being asked by the audience that watch us about what's happening with Lebanon, what's happening with Lebanon and Syria, what's happening in the territory, not just to speak about in an Israeli perspective. And I think this is what's important. A lot of times I always say that in my lectures, also abroad, we Israelis think that all the world is surrounding, in Israel being in the center of it. A lot of times, a lot of things that happens in other countries could affect us, but not necessarily having something to do with us. So it's important for us also to learn that. That's why I put a lot of emphasis when I go on TV and when I speak about it, and also in my lectures, to give the historic perspective of Lebanon and how we got to where we got today with Hezbollah and what's going on. Because not all of Lebanon is Hezbollah. Not all of Lebanon are against Israel. Not all of Lebanon are supporting Iran or supporting the fight against Israel. And that's something that you need to understand from also a Lebanese perspective. Also, you can find Lebanese that hate Hezbollah and against the Islamic Republic of Iran is holding in Lebanon, but also hates Israel. We have also part of these, and you need also to kind of listen to what they have to say, because they suffered a lot through wars. Although they weren't the target, but the Lebanese suffered because of the wars.
Yeah, of course.
Not because Israel was interested in having the war, because Israel was caught up and brought to having a fight. But it affected people, and we need to also understand that perspective. That maybe generations in the future, when we start speaking with each other, then these problems could be solved. Like, for example, we're not in war with Jordan or Egypt, but we didn't really do a good work with connecting the people together. I think this is why...
It's kind of been, it's like you said, peace on paper, but there's no peace between the people.
Yeah.
But I think that you, Jonathan, definitely have a big role that you're playing now, and you definitely will be part of those conversations to bring the people together. You're an incredible person, and it's been so lovely speaking with you today. Jonathan Elkhoury, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me, Sarah.